Hi, everyone. It's me, Tim. And today I want to talk about people I like working with. And this is an interesting question from Postal0311 who asks, could you please tell us about the characteristics of the people you enjoyed working with? The characteristics of the people you felt helped you achieve the most? Basically, what can we do and act to be better team members in a project? That is a great question. And he even said, don't name people, and I'm not going to. Because even though this is a good thing, he wants to know about what characteristics there are. How did people act that made me go, this is fantastic. I wish more people acted this way. The game is better because of this. And even more importantly, sometimes for me, making the game was more enjoyable because I got to work with people like this. I thought about this for a while. I chewed on it. I thought of people I liked working with. I thought of what they shared in common. And I should say, like, there are people I've worked with in the past and we made a good game, but I'm not sure I want to work with them again. And there were people I never got to work with that I watched working on other games that I wished I had worked with them. There are friends of mine that I've even told some of them, you and I couldn't work together. And it's because we're just very different. So don't view this as, my guide to characteristics you have to find in people. But these are things that make me happy to work with people and I think make better games, at least when you're making them with me. So I've got 5 things. They're not in order. I hate giving things in order because some people argue about the order. So these are just randomly thrown out there. The 5 things that I like most about people, characteristics about people that makes me like working with them. The first one, I like working with smart people. I've mentioned this before. Going through high school and college, as the pond got bigger and turned into an ocean, I discovered I really liked working with smart people. Smart people are just clever. And I know that sounds synonymous because someone accused me once of, you only like working with college folks. And I'm like, no, I don't. There was so much wrong with what they said that it made me look at them differently. Like, wow, this is a chip that you carry on your shoulder. Because I could give so many examples of just clever, smart people I worked with who didn't go to college. The tech director at Interplay, a ton of people on the Fallout and team and at Troika. A college degree doesn't necessarily make you clever. It just makes you educated. And those are different things. But what I mean by smart is I like working with people who can think of solutions. We're running into a problem and they're like, well, we could try this. We could do this. And what I like about that is I've worked with so many people who thought of better things than I did. And I've mentioned them here. It's like the ending of Fallout was much better than my ending. The tech schematics on Arcanum were way better than my tech skills. So these are things that I think just in my career I've realized other people are going to have better ideas than you. So try to get smart people on the team because you are going to run into situations that you can't figure out a solution. And if you work with a bunch of smart people, chances are you'll find something. Which brings me to a related characteristic, but I put it in a separate category. So the second thing I like working with people, the characteristic I look for, is if they're proactive. And by that I mean a proactive person notices that there's a problem in the game or a process that's in that maybe one of the asset pipelines or maybe the development process itself, and they bring it up and they offer to fix it. This is different than being clever because I've worked with people who said, hey, I noticed a problem here. I'm not sure how to fix it, but I wanted to bring it up. As opposed to people who literally would never do such a thing. I had to give a review at the end of the year to someone on one of the teams I had. And I literally sat him down and said, you do a fantastic job when I ask you to. But you recently started asking me about getting a promotion. And I've had to tell you every single time that you are so non-proactive. You're simply reactive. that I can't, in good conscience, give you a promotion. And I've given you examples. So here we are sitting in a review at the end of the year where I've said this to you throughout the year and you have not done it. In fact, I think I told him, I said, you're the type of person who will sit in a room that is on fire and will do nothing about it until I step in and go, the room's on fire. Do you mind putting the fire out? And then you jump up, you throw buckets of water on things, you get a fire extinguisher, and you will put that fire right out. But you won't do it until you're told. And the problem with promoting you is the next position you want requires you to notice these things and fix them before the place burns down. So that proactivity is different than being smart. Proactivity is noticing there are problems and bringing it up and even offering to be the person to fix it, even if someone else thinks of the solution. That's proactive. I like working with proactive people. It's probably not going to be a surprise what my third one is, but I like working with passionate people. And I've mentioned before that that's kind of become a negative adjective in this industry. But look, bottom line is, I would rather work with someone who's good at what they do, but is very excited about doing it, than someone who's great at what they do, who really doesn't care one way or the other. It's more fun to work with a passionate person. It's more exciting. I think that when people are passionate about what they're doing, it shows through in the work they do. I'm sure you've all played games that are technically fine, but they just don't do anything for you. You're like, I don't understand. This game doesn't have bugs, and these quests are working, and I made a character that had attributes I like, but why am I feeling absolutely nothing about this game? And sometimes I think that just chalks up to passion. It's due to passion. When I look back on some of my games, there are games that I loved making, even when they didn't sell well or review well. And I think it fell down to I worked with a team that I loved, and I loved them because they were passionate. Everybody was just working so hard and doing stuff they loved and was really into it. And it's when you work with a team that isn't like that, it's night and day. And I would rather make a game that reviewed and sold but that I super enjoyed making, than even making a blockbuster that was agony to make. I know a lot of people don't feel that way. They'd rather have that blockbuster, but it is soul draining to work on a game with a team that just doesn't give a hoot. That brings me to my fourth thing. And I've done a whole video on the biggest lesson I had to learn in the industry is that people would lie to me. So I'm going to have to throw in honesty as a characteristic I look for in people I work with. I just want people to tell me things. I don't like this feature. I don't think this is fun. I think we should reprioritize these elements. When people lie about some of those things, when they're pushing something not because they think it's good, but because a friend made it, or they tell me they like something even though they hate it because they want to be on my good side. I don't like that. I had 2 incidents that happened on a game that kind of show, and I know I didn't want to talk about the negative part of it, but I'll show why honesty is important to me. On the same game, I had someone lie to my face about something, and when I discovered it later and I called him out on it, he said, I was told to lie to you. And I was very confused at why he thought that made it better. You know, I said, if I tell you to murder someone, you're not going to do it. So I don't know why you think being told by someone above you in the chain to lie to my face is something that's going to get you off the hook later. It ended up with me basically not talking to him for several months. I don't know if he noticed. I don't know if he cared. I do know that there were things that came up that we were supposed to work together that I just went, I'm not available, and didn't say anything else. So I don't know if people viewed that as petty, but for me, it was a complete lack of trust in anything that guy was going to tell me. I couldn't believe anything that would come out of his mouth. And then a similar thing that happened on the same project. I had told people to let me know if something changed in an area because it was an important area of the game. Came in, like I used to tell you, I come in the morning and play the game every morning. Came in one morning and that thing was changed. And I was like, what? I mean, I have access to Perforce. Saw who changed it. Went to the person who was in charge of managing those things and said, what happened here? I didn't want to go talk to the person who put it in. I wanted to talk to the person who scheduled it to go in. And I said, what happened here? And he goes, oh, you noticed that? I'm like, of course I noticed it. And he said, well, I was told to put it in. And it was, again, by someone above both of us. And I was like, but I told you to let me know. And he goes, he told me not to tell you that. And I'm like, so, and he said, so I didn't lie to you. So he thought not telling me something was not as bad as lying to me about it. And keep in mind, this is something I was going to notice and it was going to come up. And again, it was a complete trust breaker. And I even told him, I understand you are in a bad situation, that somebody above both of us told you not to tell me something that you know you should have told me. But I hope this means going forward, I don't trust you. And I mean, he was broken. And I was like, I had to tell him. Asked me, what do you mean by that? And I said, every day I'm going to look at Perforce check-ins on anything that you're responsible for scheduling. And I'm going to confirm that it's something that I knew was on the schedule and that it was done the way I had approved of. And if I find a problem again, you and I are going to have issues. So I don't care what anyone else tells you. If you put something in that's not what I said, you and I are going to talk. And if you tell someone that you're scheduling to put something in that isn't what I said, we're going to have a problem. And that put him in a very bad position. But I didn't know how else to trust him going forward. If I'm making a game and I can't even know what's going into it, and keep in mind, once a game ships and people hold you responsible for everything that's in it, I don't know how I could have worked in an environment where people were putting things in and just not telling me. Especially when there were things I said, let me know if something like this changes. Which gives me to the fifth thing, which is gonna sound similar to honesty, but it's communication. And here's how it's different. I like to work with people who are communicative with me. And that's not the same as honesty, because I've worked with people who, while they don't lie, they just don't say anything. So you have a meeting and you're discussing putting a feature in the game. They don't say anything. They don't like it. They don't want to work on it. They have a better idea, but they don't say anything. So this is different than being proactive, and this is different than being honest. These are people who just have zero communication skills. The biggest frustration I have with working like people like that is they never, ever think of themselves as being a problem. They always go, well, I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything negative. Okay, let me flip that around then. The reason I like working with communicative people is even if what they're saying isn't something you agree with, it certainly gives you a perspective in the game that many of your players may have. It's when you work with people who tell you what they think about things and act as a good sounding board on that, that is way more respectful than just saying nothing because you feel like you just don't want to get involved. And I know there are people who go, I'm very introverted, I don't want to say that. There's a million ways you can do it. You can go say it to your lead and ask the lead to bring it up and not tell you. We often had a lot of ways people could suggest things anonymously if they wanted to. But when I work on teams where there are just people who don't say anything, even when they're really good at what they do, afterwards I find myself going, I'd rather work on a team that communicated more, that talked more about the good stuff and the bad stuff, than basically just sat quietly and said nothing. And then the game went out and they were like, It's funny. It's not proactivity. It's not passion. It's not honesty. It's literally wanting to work with people who will tell you how they think and how they feel. And I think the lack of talking is very different than people who lie to you or just are reactive to things. So I hope that answers your question, Postal0311. And just to recap, I like working with smart, proactive, passionate, honest, communicative people. That's my best team.